other side, and yeah. So I don't know, lots of different sides, but hopefully, I don't know, hopefully you found it an interesting one. I actually have a little recommendation for you today, because this week I have been listening to a new podcast, which is very rare for me, and it's less of like a traditional podcast where it's like an episode every week, and also this recommendation is very outdated. Like, this came out maybe like a year ago. It's just as interesting now as a year ago, but I definitely, I mean, probably a lot of you probably already listened to it, but the podcast is I'm Not a Monster. It's a BBC Sounds podcast. It's on Spotify and everything, and I listened to both season 1 and season 2, and I thought it was like insane, so well done. I've never listened to a podcast with that sort of production, so yeah, it was really, really cool. If you are looking for something that's like very gripping and more-ish, also obviously very interesting, I would highly recommend. It's called I'm Not a Monster, and there's 2 seasons, and it's essentially a journalist covering, it's kind of like a documentary but in a podcast, and both seasons follow a different person, and the journalist, like the guy who speaks in the podcast, is trying to figure out why these people enter as members of ISIS. And yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. The reason I heard about it actually is because the producer, not the guy that speaks, but the other person that like produces it, is actually coming to my uni to do a guest lecture. I'm doing a course at the moment on forced migration and refugees, so obviously very relevant to that topic, and he's coming to talk to us, like to my class, topic like about the experience of like podcasting and migration journalism, etc. And I saw that he was going to be a guest lecturer, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll give that podcast a listen. Like, I have a couple podcasts that I love, Sophie and Wayne, obviously, and then, to be honest, they're my only podcasts I absolutely love. And then I have a few others that I like listen to here and there. Like, I love Emma Neal's podcast. I sometimes listen to What We Said, Jordan Teresa's podcast. Like, yeah, those are some of my favourites, but I don't actually have that many that I'm like super loyal to. So I was like, okay, I'll give this a go. And I literally binged these episodes. It was actually perfect because last weekend I went to Bristol, which I'll go over quickly in a minute. But I binge listened to it on the coach on the way there, and then the coach on the way back. And like when I'm walking to the gym, when I'm at the gym, I'm walking back from the gym, like walking to uni, etc. I've just been listening to it for the full, I think for around like a week. I started it like literally 9 days ago, and I've listened to both seasons. And yeah, I really, really recommend, just as something like a little bit different. That I personally also only really listen to like you can tell from the podcast that I recommended, people where it's like someone like me who either has a platform on another social media or just started on podcasting, but are like quote regular people, you know, and like it's very chatty, conversational, whereas this podcast has so much production and like interviews, and yeah, obviously like a much harder hitting topic than the podcast I normally listen to. And I just thought it was really good, so I'm excited to go to the talk now, because it was one of those things where I was like, oh, maybe I should listen to this thing because I wish we could talk at the uni, like I should probably listen. And then I listened and I was like, wait, this is amazing, and I wish there was more series and like more to hear, because I just thought it was so good. So last weekend I went to Bristol, found a cheap hotel and like cheap coach tickets, so it was so fun. I really love Bristol. I have been before. I went actually for the uni open day in like 2017, and then I also went 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, coming up to 3 years ago. I was going to be like, it was in 2021, but that's obviously 3 years ago now. It's crazy. So yeah, like 2.5, 3 years ago with my friends from school, and I loved it then, and I loved it again. It really reminds me of Edinburgh, just like a small city with a lot of really nice architecture, and there's a lot of different areas with like very different vibes. I'd say in Edinburgh there's more of like an overarching essence to the city, but for example Clifton Village we went to, and to me that's just like Stockbridge, like a very affluent, like rich area with like really nice bakeries and coffee shops and, you know, that sort of thing, like little knick-knack shops. Literally Stockbridge and Edinburgh is just like that. yeah, I really loved it. It made me miss Edinburgh, but it's hard because in one hand it's like it makes me miss it, and on the other hand, I know that it was exciting because I'd not really been to Bristol a lot. Whereas towards the end of Edinburgh, I kind of felt like I'd like done everything, and obviously there's always more to do. But I'm really enjoying living in London at the moment and just being like overwhelmed with choice of weekend activities or evening activities. And there's just so much on, and yeah, I think it's like such a privilege to have access to all of that. So yeah, bit of both. We went to a really nice restaurant called Souk Kitchen. I think it was like Middle Eastern food. Oh my god, it was delicious. It was a bit more expensive. I think I spent like £30 or like £25, which typically I would say people spend so much money on eating out in London, but I tend to limit myself to like £15 for a meal out. I used to have a rule of £10 for eating out when I was like in school, because that was more doable then. But yeah, I don't normally go to like restaurants where you have to spend like 20 quid or 25 quid, and I feel like they're coming more common, and as I'm getting older and people have more money as well, I feel like I'm getting invited to those more. But I really do prefer to not spend like loads, because I don't really feel like it is much better. However, this restaurant was amazing. Soup Kitchen. I can't remember what the area was called, but we got a bus. It was like a little bit out of the centre, but you could definitely walk, but it was like dark and rainy, so got the bus. And yeah, I had a really nice time. We also did a walking tour which focused on like a lot of the street art, and also quite a bit on like slave trade and the statues that were taken down or like pulled down during 2020 and that sort of thing, which was really interesting because obviously you've seen it all like on social media, but not actually, I don't know, seeing the actual places and stuff. So that was really interesting. And yeah, then we walked around like Clifton Village, like I said, had a little bit of bridge. We went up Cabot Tower, which had really cool like 360 views of the city. I did really like that, but you can't see the bridge very well. And I kind of wanted to see the bridge more, because I was kept being told like, go up there, you can see like 360-degree views of the city. And we got up there and I was like, okay, yeah, I can see 360 degrees of the city, but I wanted to see the bridge properly. You can't really see it like as well as obviously from like the park right by it. So went there after to satisfy my bridge craving. Yeah, if you're not from the UK, actually only like 19% of you guys are. Bristol is a city like we got the bus because it's cheaper than the train, and it took like 2.5-3 hours to get there. And yeah, it's just a city like to a little bit north and west of London, but it's not north by any means. Kind of like near Wales. So yeah, that's what I did last weekend. This weekend I've had such a chill one, like big lions, really chill. Because I went to Bristol last weekend, which was really fun, and like it's always nice to do something, especially in January, because it can get a bit boring, life in general, and just a bit like meh. But the coach we got was at 9:30, and then the second day we had to check out at like 10, I think, or 10 or 11. And so neither day, I know 11 isn't like, I know that's not early, but both days we left I think at like 10:30. I feel like both days I got up earlier than I normally would on a weekend. I don't know, I normally get up at like 10 one day of the weekend and like lounge a bit, whereas because we had to check out, I was like got up, got ready and left. So this weekend I was very pleased to just be like relaxing, chilling, to relax. And yeah, this week for me has been not so bad actually. These first few weeks of uni have actually not been so intense, which has been really welcomed, because obviously I had to start the term off the back of my previous course exams. So I was pretty burnt out going into this term, and these first 2 weeks I've had like a decent amount to do, but not, endless. And I've kind of just taken that and ran with it. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna like burn myself out even further when right now I can chill this tiny bit. This week and next week I'm definitely gonna have more work, so just gotta take the wins what you can, I guess. Okay, we're gonna head on to Instagram and find some questions. So this person says different parts. Oh, sorry, they actually have a part one. the more I've travelled, the less secure I've become in the life I'm leading because of how many different paths my life could take. Places, people, I'm paralysed by the choice. So I assume you've read The Bell Jar because like the way you've written this is like as if you've just literally finished that chapter with the fig tree analogy. If you've not read it, basically it's just a little analogy. You look up at the fig tree, there's like so many figs, they look amazing, there's like so many to choose from, you don't even know which one looks the best, they look so good. And then you're like, oh, you sit there thinking, oh, I don't know which one, I'm not sure. And you wait and decide, and then suddenly they all sort of turn to like shriveled up figs, and like they've all gone off and they're all a bit mouldy and shriveled. And like the feeling of being paralysed actually held you back from picking any of the figs. And now you're in a position where there are no figs left because the choice paralysed you. It's not actually quite depressing, but I have felt like this at points. I think when you're like 18 and you've just finished school, you maybe know a few people in their 20s and you've seen like a few options for like what your life could be. But then the older you get, and like this person said, the more they've travelled, you just see more and more options. Like, and obviously it's a privilege to feel like you have so many choices in life and like you have so many routes you could go down. But if you do feel like that, it can then be difficult to pick what feels right for you. And I think the older I get, even though like, I don't know, I think in general, like obviously you can't do everything and anything because of like the constraints of life. But I do think that the older I've gotten, the more I've realised just how many options there are. Like you see certain people, you know, go off and do this thing in this country, or get a corporate job in London, or like move to a rural area in England and like have a like slow life. You just see so many options, and I think social media makes this so much worse because not only now can you see the people that you know, what they choose to do in life, but you can also see the thousands and potentially millions of people online. You're scrolling on TikTok every day, naturally, I don't even know, naturally want to watch 10 TikToks, and then, you know, you do it. It's like, hey, was that really a goal? Because it was so easy to do. Like, you didn't have to use any discipline, you just naturally did that. So I think most goals require discipline, and yeah, I guess break it down so you can do like smaller chunks, like small steps. So if you want to like have a certain job, for example, you can build your way up. How to cope with rejection, and then in brackets they put master's programs or opportunities. Rejection, it sucks. One of the hardest feelings, I think, and it's a feeling of like what could have been, because like you said, if you get rejected from a master's program or a uni or a job, or even rejection from like a flat, rejection from a partner or a friend, it's like in your mind you have a certain like envisionment of how something's going to go. You're going to live in this flat with this job, and you're going to date this person, friends with that person, you know, etc. And that's what you think is going to happen, what you want to happen. So when you're rejected from something, it's hard because it's like a physical barrier to the life that you've envisioned for yourself. And what's difficult is that you often can't overcome that. As in, like, if you're rejected from a certain program, you can't do it. Like, I'm not saying you can't get through it, obviously you can, but it's not like something you can work on as such. Like, you can't go to that degree. You can always reapply and like apply somewhere else, and there's always like more opportunities. But rejection sucks because it's just like a barrier to what you want your life to be. Like, if you've applied something, obviously in some part of you wants that to be real. So it is really weird when you're rejected from something and it means that you don't get to do it. I'm trying to think of an example from my life. I applied to do a year abroad in New York, which would have been so cool. I actually can't even cope with how cool that would have been. And my friend actually at Edinburgh they have like one spot per year for someone to go to this university in New York, it's Columbia, and yeah, they have one spot per year. My friend actually in the year below did it in her year, and it sounded amazing. Like she literally loved it so much. And yeah, in first year, I had been super keen. Like even before I went to Edinburgh, I actually picked Edinburgh partly because they had a year abroad program. My other top choice was Bristol, like I was talking about earlier, and they didn't have a year abroad for the degree I was doing. And that was ultimately one of the reasons why I chose Edinburgh. Yeah, in first year I found out about this new year abroad. Second year, I was like, researched it way more, like wrote my application, and like, all this stuff, I applied, and then I didn't get it. And the irony of it all is that nobody actually went on the year abroad because it was COVID. My year abroad would have started September 2020, so the university had to approve everything like months in advance to be 100%. Even the people that went the year after me, it was very touch and go, like whether they were going to get to know. Yeah, so the fact that I didn't get it is like, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon because it was a big rejection. I was like upset, I wasn't like devastated. I had envisioned how cool it would be, but I knew there was only one spot and I knew just like how best it would be, and like I hadn't got the highest grade in first year, so I knew that it was going to be a long shot. Yeah, I just thought it's so interesting then when the opportunity then fell through, like whoever did get that year abroad didn't get to go either. I was just thinking, there's something so interesting about that. Like it's not good for me that no one went. It's actually bad because I then ended up reapplying and getting the Barcelona opportunity, which then I didn't get to do obviously because of COVID. But yeah, it's just so interesting I think how that whole thing worked out. But anyway, yeah, I remember feeling like just a little bit like frustrated because I thought it would be really cool and I felt like I could make a really cool life there, and like I'd looked at the courses I could study, and yeah, I don't know, I studied economics, so obviously New York is like a huge financial city, and like being there, like a huge part of my application was like it would be such a cool place to study economics, and then the university was really cool. It was in like I don't think all your classes were part of it, but it was like part of like is it Barnard, like a women's college, which would have been really, really cool. And just in general, it was like a cool opportunity. In the end though, honestly, it's hard because you know how people say rejection is redirection? It is kind of true in this instance. I don't think that that's always true, and I also don't think that's a particularly helpful thing to say to somebody the second they've been rejected, but it's interesting because I obviously got rejected, then reapplied, got a different one, then nobody got to go on a year abroad. And then I now look back and I think if I had gone on a year abroad, there are so many of my closest people in my life I would never have met, because I then ended up living with flatmates who I moved in with Neve, who I didn't even know. I'd never even like heard her name before I moved into that flat. And that flat was a last minute thing because we thought we were going on a year abroad, so we hadn't sorted accommodation for third year. So then when we had to like quickly move in, it was like new people were in my life, and like just the people I spent the most time with were people that I would never have met if I'd gone on a year abroad. Like I really do believe that like I wouldn't have met them because I would have just come back and forth here and remained friends with my previous friends. Maybe I would have made new friends, but it's very unlikely I would have met these specific people. And now I live in my life and like I literally couldn't envision my life if I had gone on a year abroad, regardless of whether it was New York or Barcelona. Like I can't envision what that would have been. And I just find that so weird and crazy. So I know it's really, really difficult, and I think give yourself some time to like mourn the loss of the life you envisioned, the things that you wanted for yourself, because I think that's so fair and valid. You don't have to like pick yourself up and carry on like 2 seconds later. But everything that I have been rejected from, or like things that haven't necessarily gone the way I hoped, I do look back and think that did give me another opportunity. If you get this person said rejected from a master's program, so I think give yourself time. Oh my god, how to deal with anxious mornings. This is so relatable. I am so much more anxious in the morning than in the evening. In the morning, the idea of getting on like a packed tube or presenting in a class, or I don't even know, like just having a class in general is so anxiety inducing and overwhelming. But the idea of doing it at like 4 p.m. is fine. I don't know why. Like I often don't get the tube in the morning because I don't really have to, but like I don't want being in like the packed and closed space. It just makes me feel very anxious. But I would never care about getting it in the evening. Like I don't know why. I really relate to this, like anxiousness in the morning. So I'm so interested. So I'll try not to do any spoilers, but if you haven't seen it, I feel like it's kind of everywhere, but new series out based on the book One Day. And basically the idea is these two people meet at like the after party of graduation, so at the end of their degree when they're 22, and then you see each episode is like that same date but a year on, so like I think it's July 19th, and you see it in, I think the first year is 1989 maybe, I'm not sure, and then you go like once a year up to like 2004, and it's based on a book. There was also a film made like kind of ages ago, I think, with Anne Hathaway in it, which I watched when I was in uni, and guys, it's kind of like, it really does hit you, like it's crazy. I don't know, I think the storyline is pretty like crazy. And yeah, I watched the film when I was in uni. One of the cool things about it is that the uni they went to is Edinburgh, so the first episode and like a few bits and pieces within that are set in Edinburgh, and you get to see, including in the film, which is also really cool, like off the Seat and like the Crags, old colleges in the series a lot, and just like the streets and like they're walking around and like their flats and stuff, and it's so cool because that's like where I went to uni, so it really is like very reminiscent and just very like cool to see somewhere that isn't on TV a lot, to be on like a movie or a show. Then they do move to London, so there's some London content, but I feel like there's a lot of London films and shows, and London's so big as well that it's not as like special because you don't necessarily recognise the places, whereas in Edinburgh it's like you instantly recognise everything because it's such a small city. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I will say, here's my like critique of it. So I had already watched the film, so like granted I knew what was going to happen. I've not read the book, but yeah, I already knew the storyline roughly, or not roughly, I knew how the book had been interpreted into the film. And even, I just think my one comparison would be that in the film it's very clear and obvious why they keep hanging out every year and why they keep staying friends, and, like their relationship and like the chemistry between them, and like the like tension and ongoing like will they, won't they, like we're just friends, like, you know, the whole quite complicated relationship they have, I do think was portrayed really well in the film, and it made loads of sense that they would keep coming back to each other even when they had massive arguments, like things didn't go right. It made sense that they would come back to each other. Whereas in the show, I feel like for the first six or so episodes, which is like 6 years obviously, I wasn't really understanding that. Like I didn't see much like between them that made me think, like I kind of saw it as like they'd have an argument, and then I didn't really understand why they would come back together just from the way that the relationship looks. Like it didn't look like it was worth as much as it is, in terms of like the way it's portrayed in the film, and also just obviously the storyline is that they keep staying friends for all these years, so obviously it does mean a lot to them, and I didn't really get that from like watching it. I don't know, I would say it was only like, I'd say it was worth watching, but maybe not entirely what I would have desired. Also really, really cool, the girl that they cast to be the like lead girl is South Asian, which is really cool. I also enjoyed watching her act in This Is Gonna Hurt. I really love her, and it's just also very cool because Edinburgh as a city and uni is like very white, and as somebody who went there who isn't white and has friends, like my friend Shreya who I went to India with is also Indian, so I think like we were talking about just how cool it is to like see like some representation of like quite a, you know, unique group, and like that aspect of it is really, really, yeah, it's really nice. Obviously it's based on a film, or no sorry, it's based on a book where that isn't part of the storyline, so it's not really addressed like I think she makes one little nod to it in a speech about not being like a typical Edinburgh student, but it's not really part of the storyline, which is completely fair because obviously it's based off of the book and it doesn't need to be part of the storyline. But yeah, I thought that was cool and very interesting. Yeah, I really like the girl that plays Tilly as well. I thought that was, I really like her. And yeah, I'd recommend watching it if you've not already. It is a little bit depressing, is all I'll say. It has like some messaging, I'd say, which is quite harsh. When I watched it in uni, I like had no idea what was gonna happen, and when we finished it, we all were just like, "Oh my god, that was the most depressing thing I've ever seen." Like that was horrific, but also great. I don't know. We like me and my friends that watched it together. We always joke like, if it's ever like, "Oh, what should we watch?" And it's like, haha, one day, and everyone laughs because it's like, I will never. I do not want to watch it again. It was a bit like, it's a bit much, but it is really cool. I think when I watched it in uni, I don't know, obviously it's not a fair comparison because I was in uni then and like it was a film, whereas now I'm comparing it to the series. But this time around, the aspect of like growing up and being like at the end they're like 32, 33 I think, and like the aspect of them like getting their careers together, and you know, it's like they're 10 years out of uni and they haven't got like the job that they want, or they feel like their career's going nowhere and stuff. That hit me way different this time, whereas when I watched it